I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Wow, that was a great video. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Fireside Chat. I'm Michael Liburd. I'm the board chair of BRIC, and I'm so glad you could all join us this morning. Before I go any further, for those of you who can't see me, I'd like to take a moment and describe myself. I'm a clean-shaven black man, clean-shaven on the top and around my mouth. And getting ready for summer, I put on a seersucker jacket just to feel like summer, even though it's only going to be 50 degrees today. So that's who I am. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank all of our board members and staff members that have decided to wake up this morning and take in this conversation about innovation, creativity, and collaboration with our three fantastic panelists. You know, we have an incredible staff at BRIC, and I'd be remiss in not acknowledging all the work they did to put this event together today. So thank you for doing that. Particularly, I want to point out Sharon Poley for pulling this all together. You know, this has been, 2020 has been an unbelievable year for all of us, and for us at BRIC as well. And I really feel as board chair and speaking for my colleagues on the board, that the organization has done an incredible job at stepping up and meeting the moment. And the cultural sector in BRIC will be changed forever. And the way we pivoted to delivering our programming virtually, starting with BRIC Celebrate Brooklyn Festival everywhere, and our BRIC at Home programming. And now we're shifting into this new year in 2021 with the Jazz Fest coming up and more programming down the line. The way the staff has pivoted has been unbelievable. And we're so happy that we're able to continue to deliver the kinds of programming that our artists create and that our audiences want and all of our stakeholders want. And you know, earlier in COVID, we created something called the Creative Future Relief Fund to ensure that we can continue to serve our artists and our audiences. And for those of you who contributed to that, thank you so much. We raised a tremendous amount of money that allowed us to keep everyone working and our artists at the forefront of everything we do. My job here today is really to introduce my incredible colleague, Lynn Nottage. Before I do that, I do want to point out a couple of housekeeping issues so that we can work through this program seamlessly. First of all, I'm going to read these notes. The event's being recorded. It's closed caption for those of you who require that. And I'm going to actually read Lynn's bio But before I do that, I want to say Lynn has been such an invaluable part of BRIC, an invaluable colleague of mine. Her counsel and just her good taste has helped BRIC to maintain its level of quality and consistency all these years. I'm realizing that I've never read your bio, Lynn, and so I'm going to read it here, and it's pretty incredible. Lynn Nottage, as many of you know, is a playwright and a screenwriter, and the first woman in history to win 2 Pulitzer Prizes for drama. Her plays have been produced widely in the United States and throughout the world. Her plays include Floyd's, Sweat, Milma's Tale, By the Way, Meet Vera Stark, Ruined, Intimate Apparel, Fabulation, or the Re-Education of Undine, Crumbs, Of the Table of Joy, Mud, River, Stone, there's so many here, Poor Knockers, and Poof. Musical librettos include The Secret Life of Bees and MJ, which is upcoming. She has also developed This is Reading, a performance installation in Reading, Pennsylvania. Ms. Nottage is a recipient of the MacArthur Genius Grant Fellowship, among other awards. And she's an associate professor at Columbia University. And moreover than that, she has become a really terrific friend. And Lynn, thank you for everything you do for BRIC, and thank you for making the time today. I hope all of you watching really enjoy this program. It should be really stimulating. I've been in a couple of planning meetings, and it really represents our mission, what we're about, which is continuing to build Brooklyn's creative future. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Lynn, and away we go.
Hello. Thank you, Michael, for that warm welcome. And thank you for the incredible work that you've done at BRIC and your leadership. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lynn Nottage, and I'm coming to you today from the traditional land of the Lenape and Canarsie people. And for those of you who can't see me, I also will describe myself. I'm an African-American woman with shoulder-length dreads, and I'm wearing a turquoise blouse and large black earrings. And I've been a proud member of the BRIC Board for nearly 15 years. I'm so pleased to be invited to join you this morning for this important conversation. It's almost exactly 1 year to the day since arts institutions like BRIC closed their doors to help New York City slow the spread of COVID-19. My first opera at Lincoln Center was in the midst of previews, and on March 12th was forced to close before we even opened. As you know, Broadway abruptly closed on March 12th. The Metropolitan Museum of Art shut down all 3 of their locations, and BRIC announced the cancellation of our in-person spring season exactly 1 year ago today, March 17th. In preparing for this morning's conversation, Christina and my fellow board members invited me to share a few reflections as a playwright and as an artist on how the arts and the culture sector has changed over the past year. What has shifted? What have we learned? What will we do differently moving forward? 1 year later, it is challenging to step back and reflect because America is still so entrenched in this crisis. We don't know when it will be safe to gather together again. We don't know when theaters, galleries, and music venues will reopen, and we don't know when artists will be able to make a meaningful living from their work. I myself have not made anything in 3 dimensions in over a year. We do know that eventually the world will reopen, but it will forever be altered, and we know that it will take some time for the arts and culture industry to heal and rebuild. But we also know that something new must be created in its place. I was listening to a podcast the other day, which stated that the part of the crisis that we're in currently is really due to the fact that we no longer are innovating in the way we once did. We keep relying on our default, resorting to our comfort zone. I think the same can be said about the arts and culture sector. As a field, we have become encumbered by the restrictions of our institutions. Too often, arts institutions shrink the weight of an artist's ideas to fit their missions, which often are shaped by funders' desires. I have found that my own creative ambitions are being stifled sometimes by institutions that don't necessarily understand the ways in which I want to make my art. Or if they do not have the infrastructure to necessarily support me. For example, several years ago, I developed a massive site-specific performance installation exploring the decline and rebirth of a small city called Reading, Pennsylvania. It was immensely difficult to find a big institution that was agile and flexible enough to support the development of this very ambitious piece, which was really designed to disrupt the notion of where and how art could be made. We ended up collaborating with Labyrinth Theater Company, which is a tiny but mighty theater company without much infrastructure. But what Labyrinth did have was the will and the eagerness to help me and my team of collaborators build this project in a way that was adventurous and non-traditional. It is really not hyperbole to say that it was successful beyond our expectations. And as we look forward to the post-pandemic future, artists will be central to reimagining what our collective future looks like. The American narrative of the next decade will be shaped by storytellers, truth tellers, and change seekers. And as a storyteller myself, I'm very invested in the conversations that are happening within my own artistic community. We understand that when the world reopens, that it's imperative that our arts institutions do some self-interrogation and recognize that we must evolve to not only reflect the beautiful diversity of the world that we live in, but also embrace the various and divergent ways in which art is made. This is one of the things that most excites me about BRIC. And as an artist and a board member, I can say that BRIC does a fantastic job of innovating. BRIC understands that this is a moment of transformation and potential and change for artists, for our sector, and for our society. Too often, arts and cultural leaders are reluctant to shift their practices, holding tight to the past while ignoring the potential of new modalities. I love that BRIC is deeply committed to inviting artists to be in conversation with the organization about how we can meet this historic moment and create programs that are truly supportive of the innovation of artists. Looking forward, it is institutions like BRIC, ones that are not just invested in having conversations with artists, but in manifesting these conversations in meaningful ways that will thrive. And now, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce BRIC's president, Kristina Newman-Scott. Kristina is the first immigrant and first woman of color to serve in this position, and one of the very few women of color leading a major New York cultural institution. Under her tenure, BRIC embarked on an ambitious, human-centered process in pursuit of clarity of purpose in the form of a new 4-year strategic plan. That process will lead to a re-articulated mission, informed by the institution's impact and legacy, and a newly articulated vision statement guided by aspirational goals. In addition, she has led a renewed commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusivity in every aspect of the organization. And it is my privilege to introduce and please welcome Kristina.
Oh my goodness, Lynn, thank you so much for that reflection and that lovely welcome. You have been and continue to be such a champion for voices of artists and also for the vital role that artists play in society. Thank you for your leadership. And on a personal note, Lynn, you've been a tremendous friend and mentor for me. And I'm deeply grateful to be able to be at BRIC under your leadership and with your friendship. So thank you this morning for joining us.
Thank you, Kristina.
Hello, everyone. It is lovely to be with you this morning. I would like to follow in Lynn's footsteps and share with you, for those of you that might not be able to see me, that I am a Black woman with black curly hair that I told Michelle was an afro this morning. And she was like, that's not big enough to be an afro, but I disagree. We'll talk about that later. I'm in a bright room with art on the walls. I'm wearing blue rimmed glasses, and it is truly a pleasure to be here. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that this event takes place during Women's History Month, and that I follow in the footsteps of an impressive line of women leaders at BRIC, which includes founding executive director Nanette Raynon and my predecessor, Leslie G. Schultz, who have been instrumental in building this fantastic institution. Our board chair, Michael Liburd, also stepped into his leadership role following the tenures of a series of equally impressive women board chairs, some of whom are here with us this morning. Thank you, Lizanne Fontaine and Lenore Cooney, for your leadership. I want to give some love to our women leaders during Women's History Month. And Lizanne and Lenore are joined by 17 incredibly talented women on our board. Don't worry, men. We love you. We always will, but this is Women's History Month. You know, as I think about this last year, we're truly living through a once-in-a-lifetime moment of disruption and change. Our country is reckoning with two life-threatening pandemics, COVID-19 and anti-Black racism. These pandemics have had a profound impact on BRIC, the creative sector, young people, artists, and all of the New Yorkers that we serve. In the face of an uncertain economic future, I'm really proud that, led by our board, BRIC made and lived up to a commitment to protect our creative workforce, a workforce that is nearly 60% staff of color. We haven't laid off, furloughed, or cut the salaries of a single one of our just under 100 full-time member staff due to the pandemic. This commitment to our creative workforce has enabled BRIC to work from a position of strength and not fear. It has allowed us to take risks, to pivot, and to shift our practice and not be afraid to fail forward. As a community, we've also created space to be vulnerable as we navigate this pandemic, a moment that continues to be deeply unsettling for all of us. And I have to say that BRIC's team has been doing an incredible job during this very challenging time. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge my incredible staff at BRIC. Thank you for your leadership and all that you've been doing to support our work. You see, the question that we asked ourselves early in the pandemic is, how will we show up for our community in this moment? We have commissioned hundreds of artists through our BRIC at Home virtual programming initiative, as well as launched innovative new programs, such as our One Brooklyn TV initiative, which we broadcast about 3 hours of educational content produced by the Department of Education every day. And we co-designed this program early during the pandemic with the DOE to really help to reach young people who didn't have access to technology or Wi-Fi. And you know, that was because we reached out and we said, how can we help? And so that program is going on into its 10th month. We've continued to engage and pay teaching artists, one of the most vulnerable groups in New York City's creative workforce, as we continue to serve upwards of 40 public school partners. As we responded to the needs of our community, we anchored our programming efforts in our strategic plan, which was adopted in November of 2019. This plan is rooted in BRIC's values of integrity, inclusivity, equity, and creative risk-taking, and envisions a Brooklyn where all people have meaningful connections to artistic experiences, the tools and opportunity to express their creative potential, and the power to transform their world. Now, the moment that we are all virtually gathered for, a conversation with a panel of esteemed guests who are all partners in the commitment to building Brooklyn's creative future. First, let me share that in one of our planning calls, it came to light that each of our panelists live within blocks of one another and BRIC House. I was struck by this realization that we're all, in essence, neighbors, and even in a place like Brooklyn, which is such a global melting pot whose impact is felt around the world, there's a beautiful intimacy here because we're also a community. And this is how we approach our work at BRIC. We often talk about our BRIC Celebrate Brooklyn Festival, bringing people together from around the world and around the block. So a deep commitment to our borough is part of our DNA. So with that, I'd like to introduce some of our neighbors this morning. Shazad Garcia is a Brooklyn-based artist known for her mixed media paintings that are informed by her Caribbean heritage. History, especially the colonial history of her native Dominican Republic, plays a central role in her work. Through her deeply thoughtful process, Scherezade has a magical ability to make challenging subjects that are sometimes painful, accessible, and beautiful to explore. Scherezade has had solo exhibitions at the Havana Biennial, Long Island University, Praxis Gallery, and Taller Boricua. BRIC is proud to have featured Scherezade's work in the exhibition titled Bordering the Imaginary. Her work has also been included in group exhibitions at prestigious institutions such as the Smithsonian American Art Museum and Museum of Latin American Art. She's an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Austin and at Parsons School of Design at the New School. Finally, in 2020, she was named a Colleen Brown Art Prize recipient. Let's now enjoy a clip from Shehrazade's video piece, The Piñata. Scherezade will tell us a little bit more about that piece that we all just saw when we get into our conversation. Next, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Michelle Kofi. Michelle Kofi is co-founder and executive director of the Lambent Foundation, a valued voice in progressive philanthropy. Michelle sustains the strategy and vision for the Lambent Foundation and its network of grantee partners. Michelle could teach a masterclass on cultural and philanthropic practice, okay? What is so remarkable about Michelle is that even with all of that expertise and experience, she always functions from a place of curiosity. Michelle's adaptive orientation and abolitionist lens drives her to work for just and equitable futures where more people hold collective power. BRIC has been in partnership with the Lambent Foundation for 13 years. And for this past year, we've deepened our collaboration through a special partnership to bring together Lambent's grantee network across 3 landscapes, Nairobi, New Orleans, and New York City. Through this effort, Michelle has created space for us to bring our whole selves to the table and to think beyond the systems in which we work. Here is a video piece that highlights our unique collaboration.
This experiment came out of this desire to connect. Gibran Rivera will be helping us gain a better understanding to help ground us as leaders in these unknown times.
We are living between paradigms. There's a paradigm that is definitely dying. There's a paradigm that is definitely being born. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
What was that impact of that standstill in terms of your work?
What's absolutely amazing about the Kenyan creative sector, it's its ability to self-organize.
One of the things, of course, that you can do is be part of a network that is supportive, is keeping an ear to the ground and trying to make sure that those who need any sort of support is you're available for them.
Just acknowledge the humans here. See if you can channel your own inner dopeness as you look at the dopeness on the screen. And your leading edge question is the question that you do not have the answer to. If you had the answer to that question, that answer will go the furthest to advance your work.
I definitely want to get into VUCA and for all of us this morning to channel our inner dopeness, okay? That is something that Michelle's got to put on a bumper sticker with Gibran. Finally, allow me to introduce our last neighbor in this wonderful panel, Louis Smithingham. Louis is the director of creative solutions at MediaMonks, the world's largest and most awarded creative and production partner. Whether designing new products or driving high-risk projects towards success, Louis keeps on the pulse of technological advancement to simplify complex challenges. In 2020, BRIC worked with Louis and MediaMonks to transform the BRIC Celebrate Brooklyn Festival into a virtual event, bringing the spirit of the festival to the global stage for a 2-day lineup of performances that now has garnered over 3 million views. It was also awarded first prize at BIA World, the International Festival Events and Live Communication. And look, it was the first time we took BRIC Celebrate Brooklyn from the park to the global virtual stage, and we won an award. Hello. Louis has the ability to immediately pull you into his way of seeing the world. I look forward to all of us getting swept up in Louis's sense of wonder, play, and creativity. Let's see some highlights from our collaboration. Memories. All right. Welcome to the stage, Michelle Kofi, Shazad Garcia, and Louis Smithingham. Welcome. Good morning. Hi, guys. It's so good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, welcome. So I want to jump right into it because I know that this time is not even enough time. Right? Like we need more time. I already feel like we need more time. So let's just start. And Scherezade, I'm gonna throw this question out to all of you, but I wanna start with you, Scherezade, in thinking about this. So as you reflect on this last year, can you share a moment that stands out to you that exemplifies what we're all facing as creative practitioners in this historic time? What's rising for you? What's something that's really on your mind as a creative practitioner?
Well, thank you for the invitation. You know how, for me, it's wonderful to be part of this just because I adore BRIC. And I think you guys are so successful in making sure you always engage community and build up community, as a matter of fact. Well, this whole year that we just, I mean, what a year. And anyways, but what it comes to mind to me, and there are 3 things. Resilience, the way that we were able to adapt, you know, and to really kind of go with the flow, no matter how tragic. Resistance, how we also refuse to comply with certain things, you know, and then that sense of like determined healing and wellness that we needed. And that healing basically activated action. So for me, those 3 things were key in my experience in the entire, it defined this moment, and really is informing my work and the changes in my practice as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Resilience, resistance, and healing. those critical things to that makes a lot of sense, especially because I know your work, and I want us to talk a little bit more about your process and a little bit more. Louis, what's coming up for you as you reflect on this last year going through COVID-19?
I mean, so I work in media, so I'm going to be focused. And first of all, I'm so honored to be here with this group of amazing people. As you started going through the credits, my imposter syndrome got more and more and more. I'm sort of sitting there like, well, like I won a 4th grade art contest. So like, I guess that's like it.
That is amazing.
It was a decent painting. Anyway, I guess the thing that came to me as a person that works in media is this transformative shift in formats. And the fact that digital came to fore. And we saw that in BRIC as well, this amazing physical festival. And I'm a person who, like, my first job was working in touring. And so I'm very much about real events and taking that and virtualizing that. One of the things that we saw as a side part about that is when you virtualize something and you do what we did, which was you create interactivity as part of that, it creates ownership. And in doing so, you also create access. We took this festival. I mean, Brooklyn is an amazing, beautiful city. It's huge, but it's not the world. And by opening that up to the world, by bringing it online, we were able to bring it to anyone. Now, conversely, one of the things that really has stuck out to me in recent times, and it's something that BRIC, it's so awesome that you're working on this, is the digital divide that's occurred. And the fact that, there was an article the other day, 12 million people or 12 million students in the United States don't have access to adequate internet. And when you start talking about this, the fact that, frankly, if I didn't have access to high-speed internet, I wouldn't have a job. I don't have any real practical skills other than working in digital formats. And so it's this thing where you can imagine the difficulty that people have. And as a person that grew up in vocational training, that's how I got into filmmaking. It was like, I wasn't necessarily set up for school, but I took filmmaking instead of cabinet making to be a news camera person. And I think when you look at the training that BRIC does, bridging that digital divide is so important. I think Michael in an earlier meeting mentioned that 30% of Brooklynites don't have access to internet. And that divide was something that became so evident as this pandemic progressed.
Yeah, that's, it's interesting. BRIC at the top of the pandemic realized quite quickly how important it was going to be for us to pivot our classes that we were doing in person, Louis. Like, we weren't doing our classes virtually because we have a classroom and, we can fit maybe 40 people, but very quickly our classes transitioned to virtual, which now opened it up, to your point, to the whole world. And we ended up going from 40 people to 19 countries and 19 states overnight, so to speak. So I think that, that digital divide continues to be a priority in terms of the work that we do at BRIC. Thank you for that. Michelle, what's coming up for you? What are some of the things that you're reflecting on, especially given all the work that you've been doing in collaboration with us and bringing the networks together?
Well, thanks, Christina. And I also just want to pause and really thank Lynn and Michael and you for starting this day in such a powerful, truth-telling, magical way. Like, that's how I want to start all days, that inspired. Also for the visually impaired, I want to say that I am a Black woman with medium length hair, wishing it was as big as Christina's. I'm wearing reading glasses and a little bit of a textured top. And Christina, if you don't mind, I think the philanthropic practice is so, it sits behind either ironclad walls or velvet curtains. So I want to speak a little bit about what does philanthropic practice look like for Lambent. And so for Lambent, we have this deep belief that art and aesthetics and artistic practice is central and critical to vibrant communities and healthy ecosystems. And so we honor this experimentation and the exploration, and we try new things. And so, as you mentioned in the opening of the little video segment that you shared with us, this Conversations Across Landscapes is this platform that we developed with you and the amazing BRIC team. And the intention was to try and bring together cultural leaders from these 3 landscapes of Nairobi, New Orleans, and Nairobi to really leverage each other's skills, knowledge, strategies, and visions. And so it's on that platform that BRIC helped us build that these gatherings and really timely conversations existed. Because, you know, a year ago to this day, the lockdown, the international travel restrictions, and the isolation brought on by COVID really forced us to respond more quickly, and we weren't anticipating that. But partnering with BRIC really made Lambent's response and radical wish, truly a radical wish, possible. And it's so not perfect. We had to totally throw out the timeline and our comfort in exchange for making practice real and within our community. And the learning has been vast. You know, you mentioned that we have been in a trusted relationship with BRIC for over a decade. And Lambent really believes that our trusted relationships with our partners are our biggest assets. It's not the money that we're able to give away.
Right.
And so Lambent and BRIC have actually grown beyond the standard funder-grantee relationship into really, I want to say, a more mutually beneficial partnership and collaboration. So the learnings that I wanted to offer from a philanthropic perspective are about three. That organizational leadership is not from one voice or one person. It's not just the ED and the board. It is truly multivocal, and it comes from many perspectives. Mm-hmm. And that by using the resources at hand, we can learn and make adjustments in increments, rather than relying on 5-year strategic plans or other status quo solutions. Experimentation is critical and key right now. Mm-hmm. And that being in community, the communities that BRIC builds, the network that BRIC has been central to with Lambent's network, is invigorating and informs really adaptive organizational practice that meets both needs and fears, because those are always present, and opportunities in real time. So those are the learnings that we've experienced in this time and in this partnership with BRIC. And I am so excited and honored to be in conversation with Scherezade and Louis and you on this. So thank you.
That's a great reflection. And I just, as you were speaking, Michelle, it reminded me just of our process together when in the midst of the pandemic. I think you were one of our last in real life meetings before BRIC shut down. You came to BRIC, right? Remember? It was a few days before, like, we were all like, I'm not coming outside. And it was within 3 months of that, we started to talk about how might we imagine a new way of working in the midst of this crazy moment. And we started to really kind of unpack that and get uncomfortable, and we pulled and pushed. And, you know, I remember when we met with your team, they were introducing us to platforms. We were like, what is that? And this really, we were living the VUCA moment, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity. Aren't you proud of me? I remember, I'm learning, Michelle. Can we talk about that? I'd love for all of us as a community to talk a little bit about that, because I think VUCA shows up for Louis and Scherezade. They might not use the terminology, but it definitely shows up. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Certainly, and we're learning it simultaneously as well. We are lucky that we have a network guide, a network theory guide, Gibran Rivera, who you saw on the video. And so this VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, is not just showing up, it's here to stay. And it's a true acknowledgement of the state and the times that we are in. Between these paradigms, one is collapsing and one is coming forward. So the goal, I don't even want to say goal in terms of it, the idea, the practice of these VUCA times is to be in it. First, to acknowledge that it's here, that you can't force yourself out of it. You can't find a formula to get through it quickly. It's really how to be in it, eyes wide open, in community, and understanding and learning in a very different way.
Eyes wide open. Shazad, I see you nodding your head. Talk to me about what is resonating with you.
You know, I love it, Michelle. I feel that is so important in every situation to embrace vulnerability, because it really allows to, without even realizing, to exercise this fire in us, yet also humility, which is so important. And it comes to mind, at the end of my video, that there is the sound of the rain, after the voice and of the people, the gathering of people, and then the silence. And then there, I was alluding to two layers. One thing is the silence of the rain, that is kind of like this need of the way that we write history to silence us. Yet this determination that the truth, our histories, our memories have to come afloat. But then at the same time, this idea of the rain and is washing like a baptism is a new beginning. So right there is that moment of duality. How do we navigate all that? How we can embrace both to find a way in between, so definitely that's a part of our experience in this pandemic, don't you think?
That is so poetic. That is very beautiful. And yes, that kind of baptism that we've essentially gone through very much in this process, where we've had to wash away all of our preconceived notions. We had to come to the table with new ideas and thoughts, and very much as an institution, BRIC has been going through that process. And Louis, MediaMonks, that's how you guys worked with us. We didn't have a proof of concept for bringing BRIC Celebrate Brooklyn to the worldwide stage. We were like, say what? And so, Louis, talk to me about what's resonating with you around this, because
this interesting moment. I remember being in my apartment, which is a few blocks from BRIC, and is also really, really close to the Brooklyn Hospital Center, which was for a long time the center of the epidemic. And every night you would hear sirens going by, and we were working on live streams. And for the first time in my life, like the major platforms were going down because of congestion. YouTube went down, and you started realizing this moment where we're at this point where digital is going to become, and if it actually is, the dominant medium. And that moment is an interesting sea change moment, similar to what you see in 1917, where film becomes the dominant medium. And it's this moment where if we play this right, and if organizations like BRIC work together, you can destroy some of these power dichotomies. I grew up going to punk shows, and what I loved about that was the fact that the singer and the audience weren't separate. There wasn't this power dynamic between the two. And I watched a live stream with Steve Aoki a couple days ago. Steve Aoki, giant major DJ, normally plays to 15,000 people. He's in his room and he's like, shout out in the comments for which song you like next. And like, what's up? What do you like next? And that sort of power change and that interactivity is something that I think we did as a festival for the first time, looking at how we can bring that so audience members aren't separated by being in the audience. They're not just cheering, but they're driving the story. They're driving the interactivity. And when you look at people who play video games as a dominant medium, that interactivity is so important. We look at the way we tell our BRIC story as a massively multiplayer online story. That's sort of what we're doing, and that's the direction this whole thing is coming to. I guess what excites me most about that is the fact that we can provide voices that perhaps don't normally have access to power and don't normally have access to these sort of microphones in this digital age. That gets really, really exciting to me. And it's something where, a TikToker can beat out an HBO show for the number of views. That's cool. That's interesting. And that's so fascinating. And I think that's that VUCA spirit that you're talking about here. One thing I should add, I forgot to describe myself at the beginning. White dude with short hair, lots of over the top tattoos on my arms, and a ridiculous background behind me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Louis. So when we think about our post-pandemic future and the toolkit that we all need, keeping in mind innovation, collaboration, creativity, what should not be in our toolkit? Like, what are we not going into? Like, because there are people that are like, oh my God, we're going to get the vaccine and we're going to go back to how things were, right? Because that feels safe. We're going to go back there because we know how to do that well, and we're going to get there. What do you say to that?
We're not going back. Like, it's not, the world has changed. We've realized that digital is the moment. The moment you release a major film only on digital platforms is the moment that cat has been let out of the bag. I think the thing right now is, I would ask like young creators, is to not overthink it. There's this great quote about the Ramones where they say, you know, here's a chord, here's another chord. Now, great, take a guitar and go start a band. And this should be, here's your phone. Go start telling stories. Go create. Go show the world your life and your stories. There's a quote from Lenin where Lenin says, you know, cinema is the most important of the arts to the proletariat because it shows the proletariat's world and it draws praise to that world. Right now, we have the opportunity to tell amazing, incredible stories that we wouldn't have been able to tell in the past. And that's part of what MediaMonks gets so excited doing, working with organizations like BRIC, or building and using video games to tell different mediums. That's something else. Like, you have access to the highest end VFX tools you could possibly have access to right now. You know, the same engine that made Fortnite made The Mandalorian. You can have access to it and you can download that for free and access library assets. Start making those worlds and start building them. And I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about in this change. Do you lose me? Sorry,
thank you. We lost you just for a brief second, but I get so excited about this idea to start just creating, building those worlds, being agile and not, you know, not being afraid. I think when it comes to institutions, that there is more fair, right? When you're with an organization, with an institution, especially at the scale of BRIC, while I think we do a really wonderful job in pushing ahead, and even more so recently in the way that we've been working around One BRIC, it's hard sometimes to see the possibility because there is so much unknown. There's so much of the unknown. So Michelle, what are you learning from other partners across, you know, Nairobi and New Orleans? What are you learning about that? What can we learn from individuals who are really trying to change their, or like Scherezade too, their practice is shifting? How can organizations follow suit? Oh, Scherezade, hold on, Michelle. Scherezade.
Okay. Michelle, we are so like inspired that we cannot stop talking and nodding. But I super echo, Luis, what you were saying. I mean, it's like, I think these moments, you know, and the silver lining is this. It's like so many challenges that provoke us, you know, to really exercise innovation, new tools for the artists of how we can tell stories in a different way. And I think this is fabulous. And you know what I think? By the way, I never believe in maps. Like, my concept of geography is always been like these pieces of land that they get together, like I see them differently. So now the geography is being redefined again. Because like all of a sudden, oh yes, well, I cannot hug you maybe, but you know what? I'm going to see my friend in Dubai, the other one that is in Ghana, the other one that's in Haiti, Dominican Republic, whatever. All of a sudden, we come together, you know, and then we redefine our world. How fabulous. That's a new tool. So to embrace the new possibilities, you know, not to be like kind of like married to this old way, you know? So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, embracing the new possibilities wholeheartedly and making people feel, and we've been trying to do that at BRIC very much, saying, you know, listen, we have to fail forward. We know that nothing is going to work the way we think it will ever. Like, when does that happen in life? That never happens in life. So why would we ever be like, this is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Here's the bow. This is wrap it up. That isn't real. We don't do it at homes. In our homes with our children, our loved ones. So we shouldn't do that and set people up in many ways for a deeper and more unproductive type of failure, right? Like, it's just not, it's not good. Michelle,
and what is perfect anyways?
What does perfect even mean? Exactly. It's all about learning and pushing. It's being iterative, right? Michelle.
I'll jump in following the justice angle and the vision angle that both Lewis and Scherezade mentioned. And that's remembering that organizations are made of humans. Therefore, organizations are alive and living. And therefore, we need to really begin to understand that we're also part of an ecosystem. So how to be responsible. Organizations tend to think about themselves only in their practice. Right? They'll think about audiences, they'll think about artists when it comes up either in a budget or a program. but we have to recognize that we are part of a living organization, a living ecosystem. And to recognize that, we actually have to bring in humility. We have to, one of the big things I think that's necessary at these times is to, and then what I'm trying to do is really question the US lens and the US exceptionalism. And being able to ask for guidance, help, and assistance from other locations that we may not necessarily think of as the epicenter like New York. So New Orleans, our partners in New Orleans taught us how to pivot quickly. They are so used to the storms coming up, not just hurricanes, but the thunderstorms that come in and flood. They know how to pivot so quickly. They have a bag pack, they pack it up, and they were able to get the remote offices that next afternoon. It took us like a month to figure out, shoot, I'm still trying to figure out how to live at home and work simultaneously. And that we relied on our Kenyan partners to help us with the election process, the election mess. So we had a gathering on November the 3rd, on November the 6th, 3 days after the election, but before we knew that Biden was announced. Kenya had gone through an election nullification process. So we simply tapped our Kenyan partners and said, help us, because we were all flailing on this end. So where is our humility to understand that expertise and direction and better practices happen outside of the United States as well, or happen outside of New York? And so organizations can humble itself, can recognize that they're in community, and that we have to experiment and try. The whole idea of measurement of success has to be thrown out the window. We have to think about things differently now.
100%.
To add on to that really quickly, I think that really resonated with me. You know, I work a lot with technical people and engineers, and on BRIC, the team in New York, basically, our American engineers usually respond with like, well, let's build this really expensive set of stairs to go over the wall. You know, it'll need to be up to code. And the team we worked with on BRIC were mostly based out of Sao Paulo. They're mostly and Buenos Aires. And so looking at when that team approached it, they're like, oh yeah, you could just go around the wall over there, get around that over there. Like we stairs, just walk around. And I think working with different perspectives, which is what we do every day. We have 29 different offices. We are a 24-hour team, and we work primarily across multiple time zones. It's fascinating seeing these different perspectives and bringing them to forward within conversations. The team in Sao Paulo are insane and brilliant, and BRIC wouldn't have happened without some of the tools that they built by hand.
Yeah, that's really such a good point, Louis, because I will say that, you know, I've lived in the States now since 2005, so I've been here for a minute, but even culturally, I go home to Jamaica every year. Part of the difference is in terms of approach to just seeing the world differently. And a lot of that having to do with how you're socialized, like the culture that you grew up in. In Jamaica, a work day, as I think about this now as an adult, is actually strategically incorporates at least 30 to 40% of human interaction, not kind of work productivity as defined in America. And so as we think about a post-pandemic future, as we think about carrying these wonderful ways of doing and testing and humility and connectivity, right? I think there's something to be said about just our American work culture where people are also feeling really burnt out. The virtual world that we're working with feels like nonstop. And there is really a difference in this country than other countries that I know that actually prioritize more human connection as part of you find that there might be more increased productivity. I feel like there's too much this kind of the metrics, the growth, the like pressure to produce in a way that leads to this kind of tangible thing. And that's part of the disconnect. Are any of you feeling that or observing that, Michelle?
I'm feeling and observing, but I want to speak about something else. But still in the lines of work and labor.
Yes.
Because I feel like that's utterly important. And the partnership with BRIC has allowed Lambent, has affirmed Lambent's gut, I would say, that the work and practice of the team, of the staff, is of utmost importance, if not more importance than what is being produced. And so how are we beginning to honor all types of work and labor by definitely having a more human-centered environment, but what does pay equity look like? You know, basically I'm asking, instead of us programming justice, we must begin to practice justice internally within organizations, honoring artistic production and artistic practice and artist time. Organizations need to start doing that in their partnership with artists, with vendors, I would imagine, especially when we work all across the globe and 24/7, as Lewis mentioned. So really beginning to see the level and honor work and labor.
I really appreciate that comment about kind of practicing justice. And BRIC is deeply interested as an institution in how we can live our values and lead from within and start with a practice from within, you know? Scherezade, what are you thinking about this in terms of your teaching at 2 universities? Now you are at 2, I don't even know how you are doing that, all of that on top of your own creative practice.
Well, me neither. But thank you for the question. One thing that I've been trying to be careful about, and even though I am doing all these things at the same time, it is like the danger of overproduction. You know, this need that we have now to be kind of like super working, you know, to make sure we're productive. And then it's like really to kind of like concentrate on what is the reality of it. Like I am afraid of the fakeness. I mean, we've been witnessing so much fakeness and, you know, abuse of power. And I always think, oh my God, that can be contagious. And I am trying to make sure I get the vaccination for that, you know. But basically, you know, I do worry about that, like to really be sure we are communicating what is the core value of things, you know, not to make all these accessories. But so I've been really exercising this idea, what is important, what is really not important, you know, what is noise, you know, so, and it's been part of the learning and unlearning, you know.
Yeah, what is noise? What is that noise? And who are we doing this for? That reflection piece about what are we all doing this for? What is the intention behind it? And I think we took the time to really think about what is the goal of the work, what's the intentionality of the work, and what is the shift that we're trying to make. We more than likely would slow down.
I think so.
Yeah.
And you know what? That also comes something in my video. It's about the movement. You know, the constant evolution. You know, we always moving and changing. And then there is no absolute truth. Mm-hmm. And that is scary, but it's kind of wonderful.
Mm-hmm. It is scary and it is wonderful. Lewis, it was scary and wonderful for us to connect with MediaMonks, which, you know, shout out to Anelo Reyes, who is our SVP of Marketing and Comms, when we were all kind of thrown into this moment and we were like, I don't know where to start, really. We just weren't, because what we do as a media organization is not what MediaMonks does, right? Like there's connectivity for sure, but it's a different world of creation. And for us, we saw it as an opportunity to also learn. So the fact that we came to you guys and there was no reference point, how did you like put into practice like that process for finding solutions for this shift for such a global festival? It's
really hard. I mean, the way we were connected was so amazing. A friend of ours out of Mexico City said, "Hey, you should talk to BRIC," and I was like, "I live right by BRIC. That's awesome. We should totally talk."
By BRIC. I love it.
And it was this conversation where I think the thing, and to your point, like productivity and art are inherently at odds. Often, to be honest, creating cool stuff and productivity are inherently at odds. And that's something we embrace. I think there's a core check that we do, and I think everybody who makes art should do, where like, is this something you want in the world? Is this something you would engage with? And if the answer is no, then like you probably shouldn't do it. And I think what we took from right now with this digital divide, we have a lot of difficulty making memories and producing memories because memory making comes from interactivity. It comes from a point where two people connect and interact. And so we took some of our experiences, you know, we're all on conference calls 12 hours a day. They all sort of smear together into one sort of long sort of thing. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we started experimenting with different ways to interact. So it was taking meetings in Animal Crossing, taking meetings in Fortnite, looking at ways that we could produce memories. And it's funny, like I have more memories of some of those meetings at the beginning of the pandemic where I'm driving around in a go-kart with a friend than I do of the meeting I had yesterday. And so when we started making this festival, we said, okay, what are festivals about? It's about interacting. It's about coming together with your friends. It's about having that back and forth with an artist. And so we wanted to take that to that place, and we designed a new platform to be able to do that. And I think that's what, as this moment changes, it's interactivity, where that is interactivity and digital back and forth is the native language of this new future that's come to fore, where we've traveled 6 years in the space of 9 months.
Yeah, well, I know for a fact that our board chair wants to host a board meeting in Fortnite. I don't even know what that means. I am 45 years old. Okay, let me be clear. It's like you're speaking a new language to me. I will call my 11-year-old and ask her. But we are down. What I love is that we're down for the journey. We're going to create. We're just, as we've been talking about, we're just going to kind of lean into it and figure it out by trying it. And I love the question of, you know, do you really want this in the world? Is this, when we're working on something, is this something you want out in the world? Because sometimes we get caught up when we're creating to just do the thing because we've done it and we're going to do it. And it's a wash, rinse, repeat. Well, I know that there are folks that want to ask some questions. And so before I go into the chat where questions are, I wanted to ask each of you to share some kind of final thoughts about what we need to take with us into our post-pandemic future. And actually now, what we need to take with us to 11 o'clock this morning, the kind of mindset, the approach, the way that we are walking through our worlds. I'd love to hear from each of you what you think that should be. Why don't we start with Ms. Scherezade?
Oh, well, I'm gonna be short. I think I would like to, all this is like to really embrace change. And when I say to embrace change, doesn't mean like we just go crazy and just jump off the cliff, but just to really take all these experiences and take all those things into account to embrace change with intelligence and precaution and also vulnerability, like I said before, and be humble.
I love that, with precaution, with intelligence, with humility. That's lovely. Michelle?
I'm going to encourage us to remember our ancestral practices, and they don't need to go so far. I think about so far back. You know, one of the amazing things was to see our partners really understand mutual aid and begin to be generous in offering that with all their neighbors. And we all have that in our history, in our background, our grandparents. We knew to share whatever food we had. We knew how to offer care to each other. And I feel like I've seen organizations do this. I've seen Brooklyn do this. BRIC has done this. And I would love for that to be carried in the future as well.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michelle. And Louis?
I think the first thing I'll encourage is everybody should go get vaccinated as soon as you can. But the next thing I'll say, and to piggyback on what you said, I think one of the things that I'm so proud about our neighborhood is I read recently, we have one of the highest counts of mutual aid fridges in Brooklyn. They just line Myrtle Avenue right now. And that's so cool. And I'd love for us to start thinking about taking that practice forward into thought and into learning as well. We're at this moment, I remember being 16, 17 years old, and this movie 28 Days Later came out, and it was shot with the same camera that I had in my high school class. And it was this moment where I realized, like, I could do that. Like, I mean, if I just get up really early and film on the streets, I could do that. And that same moment is happening right now. So many of these tools are free. So many of these things and so many of the artists that make these things are available to be reached out to. And I think I would challenge anybody to share their learning and to help people bring that learning forward, because mutual aid isn't just food and water, it's also access to education, it's access to internet, it's access to digital, which ultimately leads to an access to power. And so I would just push for everybody to share information, because honestly, that's how we're going to get better stuff out there too. You know, like that's what's so exciting about this moment is these 50 million, $100 million movies can't get made. So instead, we're making these smaller, interesting, more digital movies that provide new stories and new perspectives. And so I would just push anybody to share the knowledge they have and to look at BRIC as an organization that does that really, really well and does it in an interesting way.
Thank you so much for that, all of you. And thank you, Louis. Yeah, sharing the knowledge is fundamental, and BRIC has, for over 40 years, core to our DNA is making arts accessible to all people, right? And in this moment, I think it's so much more important to make sure that whatever we are doing, to all of your points, has that ripple effect, that it's it is truly a rising tide moment. We're not just saying it, we actually mean it. We're like, how can we show up for you and each other in this moment? Because if we can't do it in this moment, when exactly will we be able to do it? And to your point about no big $500 million movies happening right now, it's extraordinary that my daughter shows me on TikTok, because I don't have an account. She's like, look at this, mom. And literally it will be like a grandma doing a dance with her grandchild, and it had 15 million views. Okay, like I cannot even begin just the beauty of the curiosity and people really searching and looking for that connection, for the thing that draws them together, for the thing that grounds us. Well, I have to say that I am so grateful to the three of you. You are inspirational. You're inspirational leaders. BRIC is so fortunate to have you in our orbit. And now I'm going to look at some of the chat questions to see what folks are really interested in hearing more about. All right, we have a question. Let's see. Zach Shazad is asking, he is saying here, and he's agreeing with all of the possibilities, and for anyone, artist, creator, that can express their views and approaches, how can we distinguish what is valuable work versus misinformation, and the kind of not so good art with junk art? Should we be selective and bring the best or good quality productions to inform and inspire? I think, yeah, Zach's really trying to be like, now that it's all opened up, do we, people just find what they find and leave it up to them? Or is there a way that there should be some kind of selection, curatorial process, for lack of a better term? Louis, what do you think about this question?
I'm going to be biased because I'm a person that really likes bad art. I think good art doesn't exist. I think good art is in intention and what it creates. Misinformation absolutely is terrible and shouldn't exist. And there's some fairly disgusting bad right-wing art. But ultimately, there's a weird moment where bad art, because it has bad intentions, doesn't really exist, because people with bad intentions often actually can't create art. And I think quality does not equate to good art across formats. Some of my favorite films are made with $1,000 budgets. Some of my favorite, all of my favorite music is made by non-professional musicians. You look at Italian neorealism and you look at the fact that some of the best movies don't have professional actors. I think that good will come from the intention and the desire to create and the story you want to tell, rather than from the quality of the camera you use or from all those sort of production value elements. I think it's a solid question, and it's a question that as an artist has blocked me in the past, where it's like, well, I can't do that. I don't have access to an ARRI Alexa, so what am I going to do? But you start looking at some of the art that comes out of non-traditional areas, and you see really beautiful, magical stories being told in new and interesting ways.
And I had to echo some of what you said. I mean, this question can take us to different thoughts for sure. But I definitely feel that bad art, good art, it is such a relative thing. It's like really, it's so weird, the territory. But what I feel that is what is really effective is like how we tell stories, how effective as a storyteller we are so we can inspire. The moment, like you said, certain things that are so beautiful are completely super simple and super made in such a way that does not need any enormous technical skills, you know, and that is something that I think about a lot. Like many times I think about when I want to tell something that is really deep, sometimes I want to go to the basic to make sure the heart of the story is told in the most beautiful and pure, if that's possible, way, you know? So yeah, this is a lot we can talk about, and I agree with you. Sometimes that even blocks you, like how, yeah. Anyways.
So I think that's right, Shazad. Going back to root cause, right? Getting right back into root cause is really important. Michelle.
You know, quality is such an interesting term, good, bad, and I'm going to go back to this idea around VUCA and paradigm shift.
Right.
So these definitions of what was good and bad and quality is part of a paradigm that is actually dying, and something else is being born again. And so this idea of the multiple narratives that come forward, the storytelling, the good storytelling that comes forward, we're in this shift. And so just encouraging to recognize the shift is happening, and our definitions that used to hold us to a past way of defining what is good and bad is also crumbling. So be open and again, eyes wide open to see the multiple ways in which communication and beauty and connection is being present, is made present now.
Eyes wide open, meeting people where they're at. And I do think, you know, words like quality and professionalism are words that we must excavate. They're kind of the intention behind them, the meaning, because they can also trap us into systems that we are actually trying to stay away from, and be very mindful. I know they come up often in arts organizations, as you can imagine, and I think they're words that we really need to think carefully about. I'm going to ask one more question. Let's see. Shazad, Madeline wants to know, how has the past year changed how you think about and create your work?
I think this whole experience, I mean, I am always very curious and I always kind of like questioning everything. So what I am thinking is that I feel that I am revising again many of the pieces that I do that are participatory. I think that need of connection and to involve community is becoming way more important. So then I am revising some of these pieces, completely gonna be different because we do have a different tools now. But yes, that's been important, and it can come afloat in my work. And also pieces not only participatory, but then they find a way to heal. This has been for me extremely important, to heal our history by confronting the history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as I reflect on how we started this morning and the 3 words that Scherezade launched us off with when we started our conversation, resilience, resistance, and healing, just so powerful. And again, I appreciate the 3 of you so much. There are folks in the crowd that want to know, and boy, Lewis, let's try to figure this out. But people are anxious to know about what's going to happen for BRIC Celebrate Brooklyn for this season. And folks, we are working on it. We are planning varied scenarios, some of which are in person, a hybrid. We're doing all of that planning now. Know this, that there will be a BRIC Celebrate Brooklyn Festival. How it manifests, I cannot confirm quite yet. And with that, we have manifested what I believe today, a very interesting conversation. And the 3 of you, if you don't, I don't know if y'all have all your Instagrams, but I'll tell y'all to go find Michelle and Lewis and Shazad. They are phenomenal voices. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all that you have been doing to collaborate with BRIC as we continue to build Brooklyn's creative future. Honestly, your inspiration to us all. Thank you guys. Take very good care of yourself.
Thank you.
We're going to make sure, everyone, that we share information about this recording. We have recorded this wonderful conversation, and we will send it to everyone that joined us this morning, and we'll post it on our website. So stay tuned for that. Again, thank you all for joining BRIC this morning for a conversation with Michelle Kofi, Shazad Garcia, and Louis Smithingham on creativity, collaboration, and innovation. Take care. Be safe.
Bye.
Thanks, Christina. Are we off?
We are going off, Michael.
All right.
Turn it over to you.
I get to say thank you all for joining us today. Innovation, creativity, collaboration. Who doesn't want to start off their day with a conversation about that? And so thank you, Christina, Michelle, Scherezade, Louis, Lynn, for this conversation. I want to take this last moment and mention a couple of things that our panelists said. I mean, Louis, good will come from the intention. Doesn't get better than that, right? Scherezade, tell the heart of the story in the most basic way. Pretty telling words. And I think the word of the day for me came from Michelle, adaptive. If we've been nothing during this pandemic at BRIC, and clearly in the practice of the three of you, it's been adaptive. Who knew that BRIC was built for this moment? That we have the tools to pivot, thrive, and most importantly, support our artists, our innovators, and our creators. If you haven't explored BRIC, please do. We're ready for you to come and check us out more deeply, and we're ready to help to continue building Brooklyn's creative future. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day and the rest of your week. And I look forward to seeing you folks around BRIC.
Thank you.
Thank you all.